the Zen Moment. The sun was just beginning to peek over the horizon when young monk Run walked barefoot along the stone path leading to the meditation pavilion. Each step he took softly echoed on the gravel, as if the earth itself was welcoming him to a new day. The temple was surrounded by hills blanketed with ancient pines, and a small stream murmured in the distance, whispering the universe's secrets in a low voice. The morning breeze gently brushed Ren's face, while the scent of damp earth and incense mingled in the air. Everything seemed calm, yet within him, an ancient restlessness beat like a distant drum. "Master," Ren had asked the night before, "what is a Zen moment?" The elderly master Hakwin looked at him for a moment that felt endless and simply replied, "When you live it, you will know." That was all. No explanation, no advice, just silence. And yet, that night, Ren did not sleep. Sitting on his futon with a candle burning beside him, he felt his mind spin like a wheel without an axle. He wanted to understand. He wanted to reach that moment, that fleeting clarity that, as the older monk said, could transform a whole life. The next morning, like every day, Ren awoke before dawn, washed his face in the icy pond, and began his routine of silence and contemplation. But this time, as he walked to the pavilion, he did so with renewed awareness. He wanted to observe everything. The crunch of his footsteps, the crow flying overhead, the texture of the old larch bark. Every detail took on unusual meaning, as if the world was speaking to him in a secret language. The pavilion was empty, sitting before the white wall, where only the soft shadows of branches swaying in the wind were cast. Ren settled into zazen. His posture was steady, hands resting one atop the other, thumbs barely touching. His breath sank slowly toward his abdomen, as if the air sought rest in the earth's belly. But his mind did not cooperate. Thoughts surged like relentless waves. Memories of his mother, the master's voice, doubt, desire, the idea of the Zen moment as something distant to be reached. He tried to let go as he had been taught, but with every attempt, something clung tighter. The more he tried to release, the more tangled he became in his own longing for understanding. Where is that moment? He wondered. Is it an instant of pure silence? A flash of enlightenment? A vision? An emotion? Frustrated, Ren opened his eyes. The sun was beginning to stream through the crack in the door, painting the floor with warm gold. An ant walked slowly along a tatami weave. Nothing more, nothing less. And for reasons he couldn't explain, something inside him stopped. Not his body, not his breath, not the world. The seeking stopped. Then, something happened. It was as if time lost its weight. The sunlight, the ant, the hum of a fly, the beating of his heart, all became one. There was no inside or outside. There was no Ren, no Zen moment. There was only this, only now, only being. Without naming it, without grasping it with his mind, something deep revealed itself. The moment could not be chased, only lived. And that moment was eternal. But just as he felt this oneness enfold him, his stomach growled, and with it, everyday reality returned. He was hungry, the birds sang, and soon the bell would ring for breakfast. He smiled. For the first time, he didn't need to understand. He just needed to live. And so he rose, bowed silently to the floor, and walked toward the temple kitchen, as the sun climbed, indifferent and glorious, above the mountains. In the temple kitchen, the steam rising from freshly cooked rice drifted like nameless incense. The old cook, Brother Shun, was already busy stirring a pot with a calm expression. He had lived there through more than 40 winters, and his face resembled the trunk of a cypress tree, full of wrinkles, yet firm, wise, and silent. Ren entered and bowed in greeting. "Good morning, brother." he said softly. Morning's what you make it, Shun replied without looking up, as he dropped seaweed into the broth. The young monk began peeling radishes quietly. Around him, the activity was practical and alive. Cutting, washing, mixing, simple tasks, but now Run felt them differently. Every gesture, once automatic, became a sacred act. The way the knife's blade touched the vegetables, the sound of water on bowls, the steam fogging the window pane. Everything seemed to say, "This is here, now." He recalled Master Hakuin's words on an autumn afternoon. If you want to find the eternal, seek the ordinary. There it hides. In the past, Run would have repeated that phrase like a mantra without truly understanding it. But that morning, as he gathered onion stems fallen to the floor and placed them in the compost basket, a small certainty began to bloom in his chest. The Zen moment wasn't something added to life, it was life itself, when the mind stopped struggling. Later, during the communal breakfast, the monks ate in silence, as was custom. Each spoonful of rice, each sip of soup was taken with full attention. No one spoke, yet in that silence there was an invisible music. Ren wasn't just eating, he was feeling. The taste of seaweed, the warmth of the bowl in his hands, the murmur of swallows outside the hall, all part of the same sacred moment. After breakfast, while helping wash dishes, Ren paused. He watched a drop of water fall from the edge of a cup and slide along the metal rim of the sink. He followed its path with his eyes. It was just a drop, yet it contained everything: time, space, movement, stillness. And there again, without thinking, he felt it. The Zen moment. It was as if every instant, embraced without judgment, without rush or expectation, unfolded like a flower that never ceases to bloom. It didn't need to be understood. It didn't need to be found. It only needed to be stopped for, only needed to be. But there was still something more Ren couldn't quite grasp. A deeper layer, a threshold beyond attention. A silence he had yet to learn to hear. That very afternoon, without anyone asking, he decided to climb alone the mountain behind the temple, where Master Hakuin used to meditate on rainy days. He knew something awaited him there, not an answer but a question even older than his thoughts. And silently, as if the forest invited him not to break its mystery, Ren took the path between the cedars and began to ascend. The path up the mountain was narrow and carpeted with pine needles. With each step, the soft crunch beneath his feet seemed part of a larger breath, the breath of the entire forest. The trees, tall and solemn, stood like motionless monks, and among their branches the wind wove a melody without beginning or end. Ren moved without hurry. There was no one else, just him, the whispering wind, and the steady beat of his heart. As he climbed, the temple faded behind him, dissolved into the mist that began to embrace the hillside. The young monk felt no fear, only a deep sense of nakedness, as if the mountain asked nothing from him but honesty. He remembered something Master Hakuin had said months ago while walking this very path. The mountain gives no answers. It only reflects you. If you carry noise inside, that is what you will hear. If you carry silence, then the mountain will also be silent. And now, walking alone on the solitary slope, Ren understood the hidden truth in those words. The forest did not greet him with signs or miracles. There were no visions or ecstasies. Only the now, pure and bare, held before his awareness. After an hour of climbing, he reached a small stone platform covered in moss. There, an old carved stupa rose among the roots, as if nature itself had built it. The master often came here. He had said many times, "When you don't know what to do, sit down. The mountain will tell you everything without saying a word." Run sat on a flat rock, crossed his legs, and closed his eyes. At first, the noise in his mind returned with force. Memories, projections, words, sensations, thoughts like waves crashing against the cliff of his attention. But he did not run. He did not struggle. He simply watched. And then, slowly, something began to dissolve. The wind was no longer wind. It became breath. The birds' songs were no longer separate sounds. They were the voice of the moment itself. The body, the forest, time, all unified into a single presence. There was no division, no thought, only that silent knowing beyond words. For a few seconds, or perhaps centuries, identity disappeared. There was no Ren, no I, no experience. Only the simple, radiant consciousness of now. Yet, when that state faded, no frustration or desire to hold on remained. Only peace, a nameless peace, a boundless softness, a moment with no need to call it the Zen moment, because there was no one left to seek. Only the now, only being. Then Ren opened his eyes. Before him, a small bird watched him from a low branch. It did not flee. It simply observed as if it knew, as if it recognized in him something that cannot be taught or learned. Ren smiled. For the first time, not with the smile of understanding, but with the smile of one who has stopped asking. It was enough. He stayed there, seated, while the mist danced among the trees and the whole world breathed with him. The sun was beginning to set when Ren started his journey back. The light filtering through the branches seemed softer now, as if the entire forest had relaxed with him. He walked neither fast nor slow. No hurry, no purpose. Each step was simply that, a step. As he descended, something inside him had settled. Not a new truth, but an absence. The absence of urgency, the absence of judgment, the absence of that inner voice always wanting more, always comparing, always analyzing. For the first time, he simply was. Breathing, listening, walking, passing by a bush. He saw a tiny flower bloom. It was late in the season, yet the flower didn't seem to mind. No one was watching except him, and yet, there it was, fulfilling its destiny to bloom, without seeking recognition. Ren stopped. He bent down and observed it silently. He didn't think about its beauty or fragility. He simply accompanied it with his presence. A thought crossed his mind like a fleeting cloud. This flower is also living its Zen moment. Then the thought dissolved. When he reached the temple, the evening bell was ringing. The sound vibrated slowly through the air, spreading across corridors, black-tiled roofs, and treetops. That deep, resonant echo seemed to remind him of something he no longer needed to remember. He passed by the pond and bent down to drink with his hands. The water was cold, clear, alive. As the liquid slid down his throat, he felt everything within him, body, mind, soul, aligning with a serenity that depended on nothing. Shun, the old cook, appeared by the pavilion entrance. He looked at him with narrowed eyes. "You climbed the mountain," he said, not as a question. Ren nodded, and Ren looked at him and, without saying a word, smiled softly. Shun chuckled, as if that silent answer was the only right one. Then he turned and walked away. In the temple, words were few, but silences said everything. That night, during group meditation, Ren sat in his usual spot. The room was lit only by the moonlight filtering through the rice paper screens. Each monk, still and quiet, breathed as if part of the same sacred organism. But for Ren, something was different. Not his posture, not his technique, but his inner gaze. He no longer meditated to reach anything. He wasn't seeking to experience something. He wasn't waiting for a special moment. Everything already was that moment. Everything already was Zen. Even the discomfort in his knees. Even the thoughts coming and going like birds in flight. Even the distant sound of a branch breaking outside. Everything was included. Everything was okay. And in that complete acceptance, in that total embrace of now, Ren disappeared once again. Only the breath remained, only the instant, and that instant was infinite. The next morning, Ren woke before the roosters crowed, not out of duty or discipline, but from a natural impulse. Something inside him called him to witness the world being born anew. He slipped quietly from the dormitory, took his robe, and walked toward the temple's inner garden. There, dew delicately rested on every leaf, every petal, every stone. The air was so fresh it seemed newly created. He sat beneath the old elm tree by the pond and simply observed. A snail slowly climbed the stem of a lily. A dragonfly rested on the tip of a bamboo stalk. Everything was simple. Everything was perfect. And most remarkable of all, none of it seemed to know it. Ren recalled an ancient teaching Master Hakuin had shared with them on a summer walk. Zen is not a goal. It is the forgetting that there is anything to achieve. Back then, that phrase had seemed paradoxical. How could one advance without seeking? How could one practice without a goal? But now, something had shifted. It wasn't that he had an explanation for those words. It was that he no longer needed one. The Zen moment didn't come when something special was done. It came when one stopped wanting the moment to be special. From that place of calm, Ren began to understand his temple brothers in a new way. The elder monk who swept every morning with the precision of a ceremony. The clumsy novice who always forgot to close the doors. The master who preferred to answer with silence rather than theories. Each of them lived, one way or another, from the same invisible center. Perhaps they didn't realize it. Perhaps they never called it Zen. But it was there. In every authentic gesture, every mindful breath, every cup of tea poured without hurry. That day, after the temple duties, Master Hakuin summoned Ren to his room. Ren bowed deeply. The elder looked at him in long silence, like one gazing at the sky just before dawn. "So," he finally asked, "have you found your Zen moment?" Ren met his eyes. He said nothing. He only bowed his head with a contained smile. The master narrowed his eyes, as if measuring the depth of that smile. "Good," he murmured at last. "When there are no words, only truth remains." Then, without another word, he served him a cup of tea. Neither spoke. Both drank in silence, watching the steam rise in gentle spirals. And in that instant, without trying to capture it or define it, Ren knew he was living another Zen moment. One more, one among many, because he understood the secret was not to reach it once, but to recognize it again and again, in every moment lived with mindful attention, without resistance, without wishing it to be other than what it is. Days passed. The temple's routine continued as always. The deep sound of the bell at dawn, the soft brush of bare feet on wood, chants to the Buddha, meal preparations, garden work, meditation, silence. But for Ren, nothing was the same anymore. Not because the world had changed, but because he no longer viewed it through the need for change. As he chopped firewood, he felt the exact weight of the axe in his hands. As he gathered dry leaves, he heard the brooms whisper like a song. While washing his clothes by the stream, he watched the water flow over the stones with the same presence he felt in his breath. He didn't need to be alone or accompanied, to think or not to think. He had learned to simply be, to stay, to not run from the moment, to not search for something better later. One afternoon, while sweeping the temple courtyard, he heard Master Hakuin's voice behind him. "Ren." The young monk stopped and turned, bowing slightly. "Yes, Master. Come with me," the elder said softly. They walked together along a path beside the stone wall that led to a small clearing. where a cherry tree once bloomed so fiercely it looked like a pink fire every spring. Now it was bare. It was autumn. Leaves fell like flakes of silence. "Ran," the master said without looking at him. "What have you learned?" The young monk took a deep breath, not out of nervousness, but respect. He didn't want to answer from memory, but from the truth of his experience. "I have learned," he finally said, "that the Zen moment is not a place to arrive at, nor a peak to conquer. It is rather the instant you stop searching for it." The master nodded slowly. "And what happens when you stop searching?" Ren looked toward the leafless tree. "Then, it appears by itself, not as something new, but as something that was always there, waiting for us to see it without wanting to possess it." The wind blew between them. A leaf fell, spinning in the air like an effortless dance. Both followed it with their eyes. "Is that leaf in its Zen moment?" the master asked. Ren smiled. "Yes, because it does nothing but fall." "And you," Hakwin added, "are you falling too?" Ren remained silent, not because he didn't know what to say, but because he knew that, truly, there was nothing to say. Like the leaf, he too was floating in the moment's air, without fixed direction, without resistance, without fear, just falling, and being present while falling. The master placed a hand on his shoulder. "Then I have nothing more to teach you. The rest is to keep breathing." They stood there wordless, just the tree, the wind, and the moment, and that was enough. That night, the moon rose clear and cloudless above the temple. The surface of the pond reflected it like an ancient mirror, and the crickets sang without hurry. Everything was a live stillness. Everything seemed exactly in its place. Ren didn't go to sleep right away. Instead, he walked alone to the back pavilion, where the monks kept ancient tools and scrolls of calligraphy. He sat on the wooden threshold, embraced by shadow and the coolness of the night. He closed his eyes, not to meditate or seek anything, just to be more deeply present in that moment. The breeze caressed his face as if the world were gently passing its fingers over his skin. His breath was slow, deep, effortless. Inside him, there were no words, no ideas, no images, only a vast presence. Then, an image came on its own. Himself, years ago, newly arrived at the temple, carrying a backpack full of doubts, desires, fears, and dreams. He remembered how he sought answers in every word of the master, how he wanted to reach something that would make him feel special, awake, enlightened. Now, from this silent present, he looked at that young man with tenderness, not mocking him nor judging, just understanding. That young man had walked all this way, step by step, to discover that Zen wasn't something to be obtained, but something revealed when the struggle ceases. It was like the sky, always there, though sometimes hidden behind clouds. He felt deep gratitude for every step taken, even the clumsiest ones, even the most painful. Every moment on the path had been, without knowing it, a Zen moment. Even the tears shed in solitude, even the mistakes, even the waiting. Wisdom was not in avoiding suffering, but in living it with openness, in not closing the heart when it hurts, in not running away when life turns uncertain, in staying and breathing, staying and trusting. Then, as a natural reflex, Run brought his hands together before his chest and bowed toward the night. There was no one to thank, no reason to, only gratitude, like an invisible perfume spreading from his soul. He thanked the master for his silences, the mountain for its mirror, the wind for its embrace, and the moment for simply being. This was perhaps the most intimate secret of Zen. Life doesn't need to change to be complete. It only needs to be lived with attention, with surrender, with humility. And in that living, everything was already perfect. At dawn the next day, Run was already in the temple garden. The warm light began to tint the rooftops and the edges of the leaves with a soft gold. The song of the first birds was clear and simple, without ornament. Nothing tried to impress. Everything simply was. He walked barefoot on the gravel, feeling each stone beneath his feet, as if the ground spoke to his body. When he reached the pond, he bent down, not to see his reflection, but to watch the mist floating gently above the water. That vapor, suspended between earth and sky, seemed to him a perfect image of what he now understood. Existence does not need definition to be sacred. In that moment, something settled deeply inside him. It wasn't a thought. It wasn't an emotion. It was a certainty that needed no explanation. He no longer needed to find the Zen moment, because he had discovered that the Zen moment is everything that happens when one is truly present. The sound of a distant bell marked the time for morning meditation. But Run did not move immediately. He stood there for a few more minutes, breathing, feeling the air, the space, the time, and he understood that everything he had once sought, peace, enlightenment, clarity, was not something to be reached, but something to be remembered. Something that had always been there, but his restless mind had failed to see. Now he knew how to see, and in that seeing, even the simplest things, a flower, a breeze, a spoonful of rice became sacred. He walked back to the meditation pavilion, unhurried. He greeted Brother Shun with a slight bow as the old cook swept the floor with his twig broom. Shun returned his gaze silently, but with a smile that seemed to say, "You're home." Ren sat on his cushion, took his posture, and closed his eyes. And in that moment, without noise, without thought, without pretense, the whole world sat with him. He breathed, and that single breath, simple and complete, held the mystery of the entire universe. Nothing was missing. Nothing was extra. That moment was the Zen moment. And it was here, and it was now, and it was always.